We all know that communication skills are crucial for any relationship. And when somebody has those skills, oh my gosh, they make so much of an impression to you and to me. But we've also had those moments where we're really nervous to talk with people because we don't know how our request or our message will be received. Well, this podcast, fortunately, is going to go over all the things, the science, the tips, the tricks, and the ways to make sure that you can have the best relationships that you can through the way that you communicate. And after listening to these episodes, you can do so fearlessly with confidence, knowing that you can be relatable to anybody you choose. Welcome to the Attractive Relationships Podcast. Have you noticed that there's a lot of people out there who need a lot of external validation uh, for their own confidence? And this is an advantage for you if you find people like that out there, especially when you're trying to work on your effective communication skills that make you relatable. When people are saying things and looking for that external validation to give them the confidence and the reassurance that they need, if you can give that to them, you become more relatable and instantly more likable. The thing about it is, though, is that it's when you work on your communication skills, you start to hear people's insecurities and their bid for that external validation a lot more often, even if they seem to be confident, right? Matter of fact, saying this right now to you, if somebody else was to hear what you were hearing right now about how so many of us need that external validation to feel confident in a particular situation, there are some people that you know that would be like, I don't need that. I'm my own boss. I'm very confident in my own abilities. And then they start to go on and on and on about why they're so confident about themselves. And why that's funny to me is because the most confident people that I've ever known don't talk about themselves much. And they don't leave a whole bunch of run-on sentences to explain to you why they're so awesome and why they don't need your validation while they are simultaneously saying all the things to get your validation. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example. So the other day I was coaching just real recently a fitness class, and there's a new person came I never met before, and this guy was intense and passionate, and I said something along the lines, we just came back from the Labor Day holiday, and I was just like, hey, I bet some of us are feeling a little sluggish because we enjoyed ourselves over the Labor Day holiday. And of course, he's intense, and it's like he has a certain ideology for life. He just pipes up and says, no, man, you got to grind every day. Your body is a temple and all that stuff. I said, yeah, I'm sure. But I'm sure we also have some fun and take a break. Oh man, it's mind over matter, and he's just that kind of guy. It's like no matter what, we get things done. And what was interesting about that is he wasn't curious to know or understand or validate any other perspective but his own. All right. He, every time something was said that was different from his ideology and from his self-image, his response was to share his to get other people to agree with him. That is the example of external validation that we are needed to kind of boost our own ego and our own confidence. And this is what I'm talking about that we see at work, among our friends, among family, among everywhere we go. And the thing about it, if you experience this enough, sometimes that experience, while it's to your advantage, it can also be very draining. And so in this podcast episode, I want to talk about the four reasons why people need that external validation, why it's to your advantage, and how you can help yourself prevent yourself from being drained from people who need so much of that validation, which may very well come from you, especially if you are a great communicator. So let's talk about it. Why do people need so much validation for their own thoughts or their opinions or their skill set, right? Some of these things make sense, right? So for example, one reason Well, the first reason I have of four is that things are new. So whenever something is new, we are looking for the validation to say, is it safe? Do the people in this environment like me? Am I doing a good job? So again, think about literally the first time you walked into a new job, or maybe it was your first job ever, and you're meeting people for the first time. You're tasked to do things that you've never really done before for a company you've never been with, and nobody really knows you or your reputation. It makes sense that we want validation from our boss to tell us that we're doing a good job, or from our colleague. We want validation to know that we're being liked and not just being shunned away. That makes a lot of sense because the experience is brand new. It kind of takes us back to our childhood, right? Children need that kind of validation. Why? Because every day is a new experience. They're going to go to a place they've never been. They're going to eat something they've never had. They're going to do things that are new to them. And they want to show off that, look, I'm proud of my work. And is it okay for me to be proud of this thing? And we give them that validation. Or if they're not sure if they're doing something right, and we give them the validation that they're capable or that they can be sure because those things are new for them. And we're just big kids now, and adult bodies. And so when we experience new things and new environments, it makes sense that if we're looking for that external validation. The other three reasons, though, are the ones that are things that we can help ourselves with, and which we'll talk about later. But the other three reasons are the things that when other people are looking for external validation for these reasons, it seems to drain our energy. Right. So a second reason why people need that external validation is because they have a lot of insecurities and they have a lot of fears, usually stemming from childhood. Maybe they didn't get that validation when they were a kid. There's one person that I know that I work with that, uh, I don't work with, it's actually um, somebody that is more like a client, we'll call. And every time he speaks, he is always taking over a conversation, speaking louder than everybody to say his point, and then he looks you right in the eye, waiting for you to say, you're right. And then as soon as you say you're right, or I get you, I understand you, he goes right and looks you in the eye again, and he tries to hold your attention with his eyeballs and gives another statement, requesting and bidding for more validation. He almost never is curious about your take. Now, he's a nice guy. He doesn't mean ill will. It's not a sense of arrogance. You can just sense a lot of insecurities because who needs that much validation with every sentence they say? And this is not an exaggeration. And so as a result, people don't talk to him much because it's draining to have to be the source of somebody else's validation and confidence constantly. Whatever those insecurities this person has, he needs to work it out, but you probably know somebody very similar, and we can all be insecure in certain situations. Another reason why people need that validation is just emotional immaturity. So this is where, especially when people feel a little bit more entitled, and especially when people haven't learned to be more considerate of other people's emotions. It's kind of like your emotional manners, like mind your emotional manners. It's not just about me, but it's also about the other people around me. Right. And so if this is different than just being insecure, this is more like I have an inflated sense of my ego and self-worth, and my feelings and my validation is more important than you. So when we come across people like that, we usually call that being in a toxic relationship, and it's very, very draining. Hey guys, real quick, I am sure that all of us have had the moments where we're a little nervous or afraid to talk to somebody because we don't know how they're going to respond. Are we going to be able to talk to our life partner without them getting upset? Or are we going to talk to our boss to get that raise or that interview for that job? If we ever get nervous in those moments, we have to fearlessly communicate in a way that's effective to get the things we want and need. And if you want to know how to consistently do that, there's a formula and a program on exactly how to do that. And it's called the Be Fearless and Effective Communicators Program. If you are interested in learning more about that, you can click the link that's in the show notes, or you can go to attractiverelationships.com/fearless. And then the fourth way that the reason why people look for that external validation that ends up being draining for us, and this is something that we might be willing to take, um, allow our energy to be taken for this reason, is if we come across somebody who's been emotionally abused or traumatized or emotionally hurt, right? So think about somebody that you've known, or maybe even you yourself go through a breakup. All right, that could, you're emotionally hurt. And in that moment, maybe we do need a little bit more validation to get over that initial situation. If you've been emotionally abused by somebody who was emotionally immature, who didn't mind their emotional manners, uh, yeah, we might need a little validation to help overcome that abuse. Or if you've been traumatized some way emotionally, right? And that takes a lot of energy out of the person who's giving the validation. But if it's a good friend or family or somebody that we're close to, that might be the one instance where we're willing to let our energy be drained for this person that we care about. But these are just four of the reasons. And if you have more reasons, you can drop them in the comments. Let me know if you find reasons that are outside of these four. Again, a new situation, somebody's insecure, somebody's emotionally immature, not minding emotional manners, or they've been emotionally abused and hurt. Those are four reasons why a lot of us, it seems almost like the majority of us, are looking constantly for this external validation to boost our ego and confidence. How does this work into your advantage? Well, as an expert and effective communicator who's also relatable and charismatic and likable, when you learn those type of skills, you start to hear and realize there are less people who are giving what everybody wants, which means in your skills to communicate and be relatable to people and to have influence with people, if you can give them what they're looking for, which is the validation of their perspective, doesn't mean that you necessarily agree with them all the time, but you just let them know, like, you know what you said makes sense, or I can see how you got there, or yeah, your emotions are valid. All right. If we convey that message that you are giving them something that most likely they are not getting from most other people. And that's what makes you likable with your boss, with your colleagues, with your friends and family, pretty much everybody except for the emotionally immature person. That would be the one person where you might cut your cut bait with that person, because again, that's where toxic relationships develop. But literally with everybody else, uh, they want to work with you. And in turn, you are going to be able to get more of what you want because they like and trust you that way. And this is how it works into your advantage. Now, the question is, though, how do you do that on a day in, day out basis without getting super drained and tired? Uh, I'll tell you this, is that some of the most confident people that I know, and some of the most emotionally mature people that I know, the way that they're able to do this is they keep a very small, tight, close circle of people that they actually trust. And honestly, I would say that the minimum number for that circle of trust is just you and one other person. If you have at least one other person that you feel that you can be your truest self with, you can be completely relaxed with messy hair and sweatpants, and you don't really have to censor much of what you're saying because you're not going to be judged or ridiculed or criticized too much by this person. If you have at least one of those people in your life, you're lucky. And fortunately for you, as you continue to build on your communication skills, if you don't have that person or persons, your communication skills is going to help you to find that person. Because what will happen is as you express uh, as you are speaking to other people and validating them, you will start to hear people who do the same. And you know what the crazy part about that is, the people who are able to give validation and not feel an overwhelming need to have to get that validation back. That's the person that we as a society see as confident. All right. So it's going to be the person that maybe you've talked to them and they asked you all kinds of questions about yourself, and you went yammering on about your job, about your passions, about your college and this and that. And I said, "This is a great conversation, man. I'll see you next time." And they walk away and you're like, "Man, that person's a real cool person. I like that person." And then we realize we don't know much about them at all. That person is the one that didn't need your validation. And that's the person that we perceive as confident. And guess what? You can be that person too. So why was that person able to expend all the energy to validate you and not feel the need to get it themselves? Likely they have a small group of people that they get that from, and that's enough for them. And if two people meet and they're like that, well, guess what? Now maybe that small circle grows just a little bit because they now know that we are two people who are confident and emotionally mature, and we can feel safe enough with each other to be our authentic selves. How cool is that? That's very, very cool. And if you, again, if you just have one, you're lucky. I was reminded of there's a guy, he's a friend, he was a friend that when he tragically died through a senseless act of murder, minding his own business, 700 people came to his funeral. And what's crazy is I told a coworker of mine that about the funeral, 700 people. This wasn't a celebrity. He was just a very nice, well-liked guy. And I told my coworker this, and my coworker said, "Man, I would be lucky if 7 people came to my funeral," which was kind of sad. But as I relayed this experience to more people, I heard similar sentiments. "Oh man, I would be lucky if I had 20 people. I'd be lucky if I had 10 people show up to my funeral." And so this is the reason why I say communication is such a big deal in our lives, to be able to have that connection, authentic connection with people we trust, because we learn, it's almost like a radar to find the right people for us, to find your people. And as Nate, that was the guy, my friend who died, even though 700 people showed up to his funeral because he touched that many people's lives, not even 10% of those people could we say were extremely close with him, or that they knew intimate details about him. All right, not even 10% of that. And that just shows the power of how he was able to relate and connect with so many people, even though his most intimate circle was much, much smaller. And that could be you too. All right. You could have an influence over tens or hundreds of people just because of the way that you interact with human beings and how you communicate with them. And you can do that if you have at least one person in your life where you can be your truest, authentic self, however polished or messy that may be in any given moment. And if you have that person, you can then expend the energy of giving people what they want, which is that external validation that helps them with their ego and their confidence. And that is to your advantage, because then you become more likable, you become more influential, And with those relationships you're able to build, you can get more of what you want in any situation. If you would like to work on those communication skills, you can visit my website, attractiverelationships.com/fearless. Because what I find is that people's biggest hang up about communicating is that they just don't know. They're nervous, they're scared to talk to people in certain context. And so we will show you how to be a fearless, effective communicator that's relatable so you can get more of what you want out of life. Again, that's attractiverelationships.com/fearless. And I look forward to seeing you there. As we come to the end of another episode of Attractive Relationships, I want to express my gratitude to you for tuning in. Your support really does mean the world to me. Now, if this episode brought you any value, I would truly appreciate it if you shared this podcast with anyone that you think could benefit from our discussions on effective communication and relationship building. Until next time, remember, great relationships start with great communication. So stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep building those attractive relationships.